you did a great job unpacking the roles within prayer.
Yeah.
Father, Son, Holy Spirit. But I think there's also maybe just a worry on a lot of people's part. If I engage, if I have a seat at this table, and I pray,
Yeah.
and I get like an unanswered prayer, how do I go about that? What maybe changes within that table? What happens in those unanswered situations?
Yeah, great question, question. And I'm sure one that we've all faced if we've engaged in this conversation of something we want to see unfold. Again, I think you have to start at the starting point when you engage in this conversation, that ultimately it's not about our will.
Right, yeah.
Which sometimes our prayers can get diluted
It's
and clouded,
good.
By things that we want to see happen or things that we want to see unfold. And so the starting point can never be our will to start with. It has to be, just as we said, it's an invitation to a conversation that aligns our will ultimately to God's will.
Right, yeah.
And that doesn't make the unanswered prayer sometimes easier because, we all know people who have prayed for something to happen, whether it's a healing or a job change or something like that, and it just doesn't happen.
Right.
It doesn't happen, especially the way that they see it happening. And so what do you do in those situations? Well, I think if your starting point was always founded on, I need this to work out for me the way that I want it to, then you started on shaky foundation to begin with.
Yep.
There's an element of faith in that says, you know what? I think I said this in the first service, I don't know if I said it in the second service, that really prayer ultimately is an outward display of an inner attitude that says, God, you're in charge. You know better than I do. Your will is more than I could comprehend.
Sure.
And so you have to have a faith and a trust that as we align our will with His, that He's doing something even bigger than we could imagine or want in that.
That's right, yeah. And I feel like a lot of times that's and you said this during both services, the Holy Spirit's role in prayer. He's sort of that redheaded stepchild in the Godhead. Like he gets put at the kid table, so I think trying to get to an understanding that the Holy Spirit, when you pray in the Spirit, how powerful of a thing that really is. Because we have a tendency to think of prayer in terms of what am I saying to God.
Absolutely.
But through the Holy Spirit, we get the opportunity it's through Him that we can actually hear from Him and put ourselves in a position where we're setting ourselves in that God first mentality. So that's great. I was just thinking when you were talking, and we mentioned this last week when Jesus was praying in Gethsemane, He prayed, "Let this cup pass from me." For all intents and purposes, that would have been an unanswered prayer. Right? He didn't, tangibly, audibly hear the voice of God, but that silence spoke loud enough.
Absolutely.
Right? So I think a lot of times when you hear a silence, or it's just maybe a confusing thing. If you're connected as Jesus was, if you're as connected to the vine that Jesus was, you're going to know that, and you're going to feel that.
Absolutely.
That's great, man.
Again, there's just an element of faith even involved in this conversation of, man, I've been invited into this, and it's just taking that step, and again, taking the further step of, as you're saying, just trusting, that God, or even that the Holy Spirit, as you're talking about, is praying on our behalf. Sometimes we may not understand it, but that's happening. So great question.
Awesome, man. Yeah. Well, cool. We're wrapping up next week. I think Matt's back next
Matt's
week, right?
back.
Yeah, Matt's back next week, wrapping up our What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do series.
He's a practical spin on it, so that's
right
going to be
on.
cool.
Well, good deal. Well, thanks a lot, Zach.
Yeah, man.
This is
Thanks,
awesome.
Ryan.
Have a good week.